Welcome to From the Sinner's Mouth podcast. Yes, we're all sinners, but try not to be. So today I have another special guest that's going to share their testimony. I have Kolbe Purcell, one of my friends who I actually met on TikTok. She started seeing me do readings and things, and then we got kind of connected on there. She even was one of our was it how do I say substitute Bible readings for the night. So try to get other people to read the night. By the way, full transparency, for like the last hour, I've been trying to figure out how to do this digitally because I just recorded one recently with my buddy Kyle, and that was in person, and we realized, oh, I got to record it on my phone, and this has been crazy trying to figure out how to record this with my screen to see if it'll even work. And then like the audio was messed up and whatever else. So if this gets recorded and has no audio, then we'll know why. But anyhow, hello, Colby. Thank you for being super patient and working through this with me.
At all. I'm excited.
Good. I'm glad. Me and Colby have had a chance to talk quite a bit. So we kind of already know each other a little well, and she's been excited to come on and speak to you all. So I guess to start off, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, did you grow up in your faith? If so, what was that like? You know, it being a part of your family, or was it not? Kind of just go into that a bit.
Yeah, so I am a cradle Catholic. So I grew up completing all the sacraments. My mom was what we call a CCD teacher. I think they've changed the name of that now. But yeah, I pretty much grew up fully in the faith. Now, growing up in the faith doesn't necessarily mean I had a relationship with Jesus, but I pretty much grew up knowing everything, following all the rules, being a good little Catholic girl. So yeah.
Can you go into a little bit more detail? So, like for myself, right? I'm new to the Catholic faith, and so I'm kind of learning in a different way. So, for those who maybe don't know what a cradle Catholic is, like what are the things that you were brought up knowing that maybe didn't have anything to do with the relationship, maybe has to do with like the religion, right? Because people always talk about, oh, I'm not worried about the religion. I just want to focus on a relationship. So, like, what were those aspects of it? Like the things that are like ingrained in your mind that you just know but maybe like didn't understand until later on.
Yeah, there's a lot. So being a cradle Catholic means that you were like born, baptized at like not at birth, but pretty soon after. Walk through all the sacraments at the right ages. So typically you go through like first communion, I think in like second grade, and that's when you do reconciliation, and then you do confirmation between like eighth and high school. You know, you walk through the sacraments at the appropriate times. But when it comes to like what's kind of second nature, I mean, ever since I was like born, I would grow up hearing prayers, knowing prayers, always being, around when we do the rosary, having to sit and do the rosary, even if I didn't know the prayers and understand it. Never missing Sunday Mass ever. Like it was like the worst sin if you did, but never also really knowing why. Having prayers and songs and things, feast days, like all of these things that I now, as an adult, am like, wait, how have I known this and not really known the meaning behind it? Um, but yeah, I mean, just as a kid, everything is ingrained into you. It's kind of a do it now, you'll understand it later kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I've pretty much known most of the prayers that I know now since I was probably in like first grade. And I also went to a Catholic school. That's something that's really big is to always go to like a Catholic elementary school or a Catholic middle school. So despite at home also being ingrained into me, it was also ingrained into me at school. Like we specifically had a religion class to where we were taking a religion class in our curriculum on top of Sunday school and then on top of what we're supposed to do at home. So it really was just like 360 memorizing prayers, memorizing, certain things. So yeah, all around me.
Okay, great. So knowing some of those, I guess, did you have like some favorite prayers that you had growing up, and then has that changed now that you are like more in the faith?
So that's a good question. Um, What something that's special to me that I still find special now is my mom would actually sing me the prayers that I know. So we have a prayer called like the Angel of God. It's a really short prayer to the angels. My mom would sing that to me. She would sing me the Hail Mary. Um, Growing up, I had like this insane fear of thunderstorms, and I still kind of do. But when I would get really scared at night, my mom would come in and she would always tell me to just say, "Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you," until I felt more calm. Which at the time I was just like, "Okay, I'll say it, whatever," and I would say it till I fell back asleep. But now as an adult, I realized that that has a devotion to Saint Faustina, and I kind of know more of the origin of it a little bit. And I actually like have a tattoo of it now because it's so important to me. So those are some of the things that I feel like I grew up with, and although I didn't fully understand them, I kind of have more of a like personal devotion to. Also the St. Michael prayer. That one, feeling like I'm like very protected and very guarded is
Okay. Can
great too.
can you sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Can you say the Saint
Yeah.
Michael prayer? Because this is something that I hear in my own journey in Catholic Church that they say almost after
Yeah.
every mass. Like I don't think it's a part of the mass. I think the people just do it. So can you say it? Because I know you know it.
Okay, yes, it's Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. Do thou, Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls.
Thank you. So I think it's so cool, but I never remember. Like I'm like, oh wait, I gotta pull out my phone, and by the time I pull it out, it's so fast. They already finished, and so like I'm just
It's a good one. I feel like it's a big like middle finger to Satan, so I like it.
it sounds like it. I think that's why I like it so much because I know like I think Saint Michael's like the like warrior angel like of all the warrior
Yeah.
angels like if the angels are having trouble they call Saint Michael like yo we need your help bro come in and handle business handle our lightweight so
Yeah.
and then when you're talking about your thunderstorms I just kept thinking of the movie Ted so for anyone who's watched that I don't know if you've watched it but like how he has one of his thunder buddy have you seen that.
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's not a it's definitely not a Christian movie for anyone who's wants to watch it. But there's now you have to watch it. It's well, there's two of them. There's Ted and Ted 2, but the first one
Okay.
he's like his thunder buddy, and it was just funny because he's scared of thunder. Anyhow,
Yeah.
um, well, thank you for sharing a bit about how you have like your cradle Catholic, and then so I'd like to now segue into was there a point in your life where you fell away from your faith? If so, what was that like? Was there like a single act that happened? Was it kind of a series of events that kind of led you away? Um, what was that journey like? And yeah, just talk about that.
Yeah, so I might give a little like too much detail here. Um, so like I said, growing up, I kind of knew all the right things to do. I followed all the rules. I went to all the classes. I committed to all my sacraments. But there was never really any moment in my childhood that I felt a strong relationship with Jesus. And in high school, I started to get around the wrong crowd and again, only going to mass because I didn't know anything different. I never felt like a rebellion. I never felt like, oh, I shouldn't go to mass. It's just like I just did it. Um, and so I actually, when it was time to go off to college, my oldest sister had gone to a Catholic college, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go to a university. I want to go to a party school. But my mom begged me. She was like, "Will you please go to this, Catholic school just this one year?" I was like, "All right, fine, whatever." When I went to this Catholic college, I had like the weirdest experience where I fell in love with a relationship with Jesus and like with my faith, but I also like had never partied harder at the same time because Catholics party pretty hard. So it was the weirdest environment where like Friday and Saturday nights were devoted to like partying. We would even go to mass sometimes on Saturday night, so we can just party as hard as we want and sleep in on Sundays. But I also like during the week had a really close relationship with Jesus, and I would go to like holy hours, and we would do this thing called a festival of praise on Tuesdays, where we would just like go into the chapel and have praise and worship. Um, which was also really new to me because growing up in a small town, the Catholic Church is very traditional, very old school. So I never really grew up with modern worship music either. And so to go to a Catholic school but still be able to worship, it kind of like opened this door of like, oh my gosh, like I feel closer, to God because I love music so much, and to feel Him like through the music was a new experience. So going to college, I kind of was like living a double life in a way where I love Jesus but also love to party, and it was like this really funny thing. Um, then I moved. I went to college in Pittsburgh, and I moved to Houston. And moving to Houston definitely was a catalyst, I think, in my faith. I was like recently 21 and living in a new big city, and I was living on my own for the first time, really. I think I just like, because I didn't have a devotion to Jesus, I again fell back into just like doing what I'm supposed to do. And I have a mom, which now I appreciate it, but at the time I have a mom who would call me every Sunday, like, hey, did you get to Mass today? Hey, did you hear the gospel? Hey, how is Mass? Hey, have you been to Mass yet? And I know her intentions are pure, but at that phase in my life where I just wanted to party and live my own life and be in this big city, it kind of pushed me from the faith because I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm just doing this because I have to. I'm doing this to check a box. Doing this because I don't like to lie. So if my mom's going to call me and ask if I've been to Mass, I want to be able to say yes, just so I don't have to lie about it. Um, but also, I'm going to kind of talk side by side with a separate, I think, catalyst to this was my drinking increased a lot. So, and these things are going to go hand in hand. But I started to party a lot, and from like 21 to probably 25, I was just doing it to do it. I was just going to Mass to do it. I think the real turning point in a negative way with my faith happened when I got into my last relationship, because I had been randomly dating people. I would make them go to Mass with me, which I think is the funniest thing, because I wasn't even like serious in my faith. But I would like have them go to Mass with me, which is hilarious. But I got into my last relationship, and again, I would have him go to Mass with me. But he actually was a very strong Protestant, and he kind of got me at a good point in my life. I was very weak in my faith. I just did it to do it. And he invited me to go to church with him. And again, I got very entrapped by the music and the good message and the environment and the people and the community and the groups and all of these things. And I'm like, the Catholic Church doesn't do this. Like, everybody there is so individual, and it's in and out, and it's very, like, it seemed almost transactional from my point of view. People like would receive communion and just leave. And I'm like, yeah, like we're just here to check a box. And so going to this non-denominational church, I was like, oh, this is great. People actually love Jesus here. Like, this is like really like where God is. Like, I can feel Him. Um, and so that's when I really started to question my faith. And he started to question me about my faith, which ultimately now is a great thing. But at the time, he had questions for me that as a cradle Catholic, I was embarrassed that I couldn't answer, like about the Eucharist and about Mass and about why we do certain things. Why do we care about Mary? Why do we have this devotion to her? All of these things that I was just kind of like, we just do. You just do it. Like, I really didn't know the reason behind much, which, like I said, at the time was extremely embarrassing. Um, so yeah, so that kind of was the start of the end, was getting into that relationship and not knowing my faith very well, and being very, had rose colored glasses about the Protestant church. And yeah, I don't know if you want me to keep going or you have a question leading up to that.
Yeah. Sorry, I got sidetracked for a second.
That's okay.
For so feel that feeling of being embarrassed of not knowing, because this is like something I personally had an issue um, with the Catholicism before I kind of found it myself, right? Like, all you people do this stuff, but you don't even fucking know why you're doing it. Like, and that's like one of my pet peeves about just people in general. People just do stuff and don't ever actually like ask why or figure out why they do it. They just do it and they listen to what they're told. And I'm maybe a little bit more rebellious, so I tend to like kind of rebel. So being a cradle Catholic, why do you think that that is, and how do you think that they can be better, or that Catholics in general can be better to avoid that going forward?
Dissertation. Most of them being
We got
um
time.
yeah, right. We're still running. So why I think that is, based off my own journey and of some other family members who've been through a similar journey, is because growing up, we're not really taught the Bible. And this is actually something that I was very jealous of Protestants, is how well they know the Bible. And obviously, the Catholic Bible has extra books, which I didn't even know that till I started looking into it. Um, but growing up, like I said, it's very repetitive. It's very do as you're told, understand later. So, although the scripture we're reading in Mass is coordinated and planned and there's a purpose to it, the only scripture we really get is what we hear in Mass. And unless you actually want to hear it, you're not listening. Like you're standing there, you're waiting for reading one to be done. You're like, okay, response. Now we're gonna sing a song. All right, reading two. Okay, stand up for the gospel. Here we go. All right, homily, normally pretty boring, right? Like it's very just like, okay, we're hearing words. Um, so that I think is the biggest fault of the Catholic Church, is that our faith is very little practiced at home. Um, I know a few families who would sit around and do the rosary and read a little scripture, but it is not in the culture to sit and have a Bible and read the Bible or have groups and do studies. Like that is not part of the culture at all. And I think that is a huge fault and a big reason why a lot of Catholics grow up and leave the faith. That's something that I personally am going to change with my own family. But I think it's like the number one thing that all Catholics can start to change is like get a Bible, study the catechism. Like we have these tools, we just have never been taught to actually use them. I can tell you how many catechisms we had on our shelf at home, but I never thought to actually pick one up. Like they had dust on them, like we just had them. Um, so yeah, I think it's just the lack of knowledge about our faith is the biggest thing, and that it's not part of the culture at all to study your faith outside of things.
Okay. Thank you. No, thank you for sharing. So I guess what would be some things that obviously besides just doing those things, like how would you implement? You said like with your family, how would you go about implementing some of those things? I mean, there might be someone be listening to this at some point that like is wondering how to do it themselves, and they don't want to like because I feel like a lot of what I have heard from Catholics is kind of like just stay in your lane and just do what the Catholic Church says. And
Mm,
like, if the Catholic Church isn't literally telling you, like, go out and be evangelists on this stuff or go out and do these things, they kind of just
hmm
stick to the normal routine stuff. And then it kind of just stays in this cycle of tradition, which I think the tradition is super important. I really, really do.
Right.
But like, how can we be better? How would you be better about making sure that like your family does certain things? Like, do you have some logistics of like what that looks like from a day to day?
Yeah, so I actually have a beautiful opportunity to implement this right now. Like, I don't have kids of my own, but I currently help raise my niece, and I also have another 11-year-old niece who is starting to go through her sacrament. And in these opportunities to help teach them their faith and kind of teach them what I wish I knew, it's it's helped me also bring it down to a level of the foundations of our faith, right? So some of the things that I do is just talk to them about not just reading the Bible. Like I started very simple actually. I asked them like who do they think Jesus is to them? Like what is their image of Jesus? What do they think Jesus does? Like why do you think he had to be crucified? Starting with the foundation of just asking them questions to get their perspective of it. And then on top of that, having just really open discussions, like constantly reminding them that there are no dumb questions. You can ask us why we do this. My niece had recently gone to a non denominational church with one of her friends, and it was a beautiful opportunity for me to be like, okay, so what did you notice there that's different than what we noticed at Mass? What was fun there versus what you'd like to see at our Mass, you know? because she got to go and like have youth group and play basketball and like all these things, right? So little things like that where you are bringing it within the home and creating a safe space for them to ask really awkward and tough questions, and also being humble enough to say that you don't know the answer. Like there are some things where I'm just like, I still don't know, but I'm going to look into it. Or I don't fully understand it, but God's given me the faith to believe it, and I'm continuing, pray about it. Like I personally still struggle with Mary, and although I wish I didn't, it's just what it is. But I constantly pray, about my, hesitation and things. So A, like creating a safe space for those questions, and B, opening up your Bible at home, opening up your catechism, picking a topic, picking something to talk about at a very base level to just ignite that knowledge and that spark and those questions. Because if you just sit and read scripture and try to interpret it yourself, like, yeah, you can come up with like 50 different interpretations, or you might not understand it at all. There's some stuff that I've read in the Bible and I'm like, I have no idea what any of that meant. But just sitting and digesting and, yeah, praying openly together and creating a safe space, I think is what's most important. So
No, I think that's beautiful, and I think that it's beautiful that you have the opportunity to even like prior to you having children. I think a lot of us have an idea of what we would want to do, when we have our kids, but like you're literally living it, right? Like you're getting the chance to like go through trial and error of this stuff. So I imagine like when it is time for you to have your own children, you're gonna like have this laid out plan, know what works, what doesn't, kind of how to teach them. And obviously it's gonna change because every kid's gonna be different. I'm sure, the younger
right.
one's gonna be different than the older one. And
Yeah.
what the kind of questions they're asking and things like that. So that's amazing. By the way, sorry to kind of say this, I didn't know that Zoom only has 30 minutes. And so there's a little pop up that came up. So we might have to do this in two, just so you're aware. Because there's so much more I want to cover, but just so if they stop and anyone who listens to this stopped and come up again, there was a little screen that popped up. It's probably going to show up in the recording. Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, so we got 8 minutes left of this one. We might have to try to do another one, right? Um, all right. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that you get to kind of, like I said, try some of those things now. Um, what, how, when was it that you kind of, because we talked about you falling away from your faith. When did you come back, and like what was it that kind of brought you back?
Yeah. Mm. There were a couple of um within that relationship, as I was questioning about my faith, there was a good portion, probably like almost 2 years, where I just walked away from my faith. Like I would occasionally go to mass, like if my parents came to town, just to like check a box and make sure I was going. And I'd go to confession before to make sure I could like receive the Eucharist, so my mom wasn't suspicious. Which is, well, I feel like that's not a valid confession now that I think of it. But I started to. There's a couple factors. So one, I got sober in a week. It'll be 2 years. Um, and I like to say that I'm not sober because I'm Catholic, but I'm Catholic because I'm sober. Because had I not gotten sober, I would not have gotten to the clear mindset to bring me back to my faith. And so I got sober, and my relationship ended last year. And I was very much involved in this non-denominational church. Like I was leading a women's group actually. I'm really close with a lot of people there. I was on like the host team. I'd be the greeter at the door. I'd help with the coffee. Like I was fully involved at this church. And as I started to go through the next semester of this women's group and lead them, the topic of religion would come up. They don't necessarily say what denomination, they just say relationship over religion, right? Like they just constantly say that. And I just started to have these weird feelings every time I was in the service of like, ooh, like something isn't sitting right. Like all of a sudden this music doesn't sound so great to me anymore. All of a sudden the people around me seem like really performative. And I don't believe every single person there is. I think there are genuinely people there who have a close relationship with Christ. Um, But it was all of a sudden in the fall of last year where I felt this like, and now I just identify it as the Holy Spirit, this pull of like, ooh, like things are starting to feel weird. Like I don't feel comfortable here anymore. This seems fake. Like this just doesn't seem real to me anymore. And I would never take their version of communion because that always seemed weird to me, even though I wasn't fully believing of the Eucharist either. It was this weird in between that I was in. Um, but yeah, I just felt this pull, and then one day at the beginning of this year, I was like, I think I'm gonna go back to mass. I think I'm gonna go to confession, and go back to mass, and I did. And when I went to mass, I also felt like this seems weird also, but this seems more right in a weird way. It was like this weird feeling of like I don't feel like I belong here yet, but also I don't think I should go back there. Like it was this weird in between of I don't fully believe what's happening here. I still have so many questions, but also that back there definitely isn't it. So like God, like what are you trying to get me to do? You know, I was like in this very like in between stage. Um, so I know the time's gonna cut off. Now I'm like really nervous
We
to
got
get
4 minutes.
started.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shift it. Um, so yeah, so and I went through this like season of still occasionally going to the other service. I was doing double. I was doing double Sundays. I was going to the other service because I still loved the worship, but I was going to mass because I wanted to receive the Eucharist, even though I didn't understand it yet. And I was doing double service a lot actually. Um, up until the point where I just stopped going to the other service, and I wish I could say I had a clear moment of like God was like, like the Catholic Church, right? Like I would love to have a very easy story like this, but I don't. It was a long process. It's a continual process. I'm still in this stage of finding things out. Um, but yeah, the Holy Spirit just started to draw me back. Like he just changed my heart like through this season from like October to like February of this year. And I can't put a finger on it. It was just this season of like, ooh, I want to be intimate with Christ again. And it's just this continuous like pull into intimacy with Jesus that I've experienced this whole year. I think also part of it is I was going through a very like rough season of my life, and I call it my Job era. I was very much like everything was taken from me at that time, and I was forced to only rely on Jesus. And I think he was like, I got you now. Like, I have an opportunity. Like, you're coming home. And that's kind of what it was. It's just this like continuous pull, like to his heart. Um, and so that's when I kind of started the Bible in the year that I do, like following Father Mike Schmitz. I was like, okay, like if I'm coming back to the Mass, I'm gonna dive in. Like I want to understand things. Like I get that I won't understand everything. Like otherwise, like why would we need faith if we knew everything? But I was like, I want to answer my big questions, and that's kind of the journey that I've been on since yeah, like January, February. So
I love that. We're gonna pause here and see if we can
okay,
continue this. So we'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Let's see, hopefully this worked because I just like paused my screen recording. This is the first time doing this for anyone listening. So pause my screen recording, had to stop the Zoom and start a new one. So I think we got another 30 minutes. Anyhow, so yes, you were saying that kind of on your journey back and how it's been slow. Can you go into a little bit more detail as to like what that has been like, and then maybe some struggles that you've had along the way of coming back in, and then also would love to know when you're coming back to your faith, like what things have you learned that have like really invigorated like your love?
yeah. Oh wow, those are great questions. It was a struggle to come back at the beginning. I think the biggest weight I felt on myself was just confusion and guilt, um, and a little bit of shame just from feeling that at the time I had, like abandoned Jesus in a way that I had gone to this non-denominational and um, felt like I had just like put Jesus second in my life in so many ways. And So I felt a lot of that, which is a huge thing that I had to overcome because that's not from God. Like, of course, like Satan wants me to feel shameful and guilty and do anything he can to push me away from the church again. Um, so, I mean, some of the main things that I questioned right at the beginning, which were the reasons that I never went back to the mass, like while in my relationship, were just like the fullness of the Eucharist, like the miracle of transubstantiation, and that was like the main thing is just like believing that that was Jesus in the Eucharist. That took me a really long time to believe, and I think as a human, I naturally still have like doubt, but my faith and my soul believes it, and it's this weird in between where like my brain is like that doesn't make sense. But my heart is like, no, like that's Christ, right? So it's this like really funny like battle. Um, so that's one of the main things that I struggled with. Mary was a huge one, and I actually had this like crazy experience during Easter. So I know you haven't, yeah, you haven't experienced an Easter being Catholic yet, so it's gonna be beautiful. I'm so excited for you. But the Holy Week of Easter, on Good Friday, we have a mass and we do a veneration of the cross. So they'll bring out a giant crucifix and you can go up and you can like touch the foot of the cross. You used to be able to kiss it. I think with like COVID and everything, they don't let people do that anymore. But you could like kiss your hand and, kiss the feet of the cross, whatever. And so on the Good Friday this year, like I said, I had already started to come back into my faith and going to mass, having all these questions. I remember sitting there. I'd gone up, venerated the cross, and I was sitting there and I was just staring like at the crucifix. I was in my seat and I was just staring at it because other people venerated it. And all I could think about was Mary. And with Good Friday is to like reflect on Jesus, right? Like reflect on his crucifixion. I could not stop thinking about Mary. I just kept thinking about what it took as a mother to like watch your son suffer and to know that he had to, but also to like still be human and feel all of the feelings that she had to feel. Um, and I just kept thinking about her and I like was crying because I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so many people in my life that I love that I can't imagine having to watch them die knowing it was fulfilling something, even knowing it was purposeful, like to watch them suffer, right? And as I'm sitting there, I'm like crying, I'm thinking of Mary, and like it's just like that strength. Like, oh my gosh, like I pray to have that strength. Like if I ever get married and I lose a child, like I pray to have Mary's, courage and her strength. And the woman next to me noticed I was like tearing up a little bit and I kind of like wiped my eyes and she like she didn't speak English, but she kind of turned to me and she pulled out this rosary and it was like this it had red roses and then it had like Mary on it and she kind of showed me and I was like, oh, like wow, like that's beautiful. Like I thought she was just showing it to me like that's like unique rosary, it's very unique. And she like let me hold it a little bit. She's like, okay, like I'll hold it and I'll just like think about Mary and people are still venerating the crucifix and I'm just like sitting there and I'm like staring at this photo of Mary. I'm like, oh wow, okay. And like a few minutes of that and I showed my little sister, she was next to me, I showed her. And then I like went to hand it back and she was like, she was like, it's for you. And I was like, for me? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I just started crying more because I was like, I had been struggling so much with like with Mary and her virtue and just like how the Catholic Church like views her. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like wow, like that, like what a sign. Like that's how I feel like God kind of speaks to me sometimes. It's like, okay, like this is your sign to kind of like pursue a relationship with Mary. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I still have it. It's my adoration rosary. I have it in my mass bag. Um, but yeah, so I had this beautiful moment. But again, I'm human and I still have so many questions. So that's around the time I started doing Bible in a year. Maybe I did a little bit later, but I knew I wanted to just start asking questions and seeking the appropriate sources to answer those questions. Um, Sorry, that was such a long explanation. I don't even remember what your other questions were.
No, that's okay. So I guess with that, and we'll touch on the Bible in a year later. So for anyone listening, Kolbe does. She actually does a little recap of what she learns in Bible of the Year. So we'll make sure to plug her in the description somewhere later on. Um, but I would love for you to kind of segue, if you don't mind. So, like me coming into the Catholic faith, I'm still learning a lot of these things. And so I know you're learning some more stuff about um, like the Catholic faith on a deeper level. Like you did the things, but didn't understand why. Now that you're learning why in your process, what would you say are some of the things that like you weren't really clear on, and maybe you did but didn't understand, but now you understand on a deeper level? Like you were talking about transubstantiation. I don't know that a lot of people know what that is, and or maybe are probably told the wrong thing from like Protestants. Like when I was a Protestant or on the Protestant side, I guess, right? Like I was told a lot of things about what the Catholic Church believed. And then when I went go ask Catholic the Catholic priest, because I'm a big person about asking the person closest to it, they're like, "No, we don't do that." I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, like we do this." And I'm like, "Okay, so then what is transubstantiation like, or like what are these things?" And they're like, "Oh, here's some books you can read that kind of explain it, right?" So in your words, what is transubstantiation? And when it comes to like some of the things that you've learned, can you explain that for someone who maybe really interested in Catholicism, that is a Protestant that's like wanting to know more from a cradle Catholic who's now embracing it fully?
Yeah, so there's so much that I'm still learning, but transubstantiation is where we believe that the during the mass, the priest is not person under garments. The priest is in persona Christi. We believe that there is a sacred part of the mass that, as I read the Old Testament now, I realize is so beautiful and so historical. But we believe that he is calling on the Holy Spirit to basically change that bread and that wine, that host and that wine, into the true body and blood of Christ. And it obviously is not only tradition from the Old Testament, but also comes from the New Testament, where Christ offers himself up at the Last Supper. And as I've learned, I think one of the main like argument is that Christ says, "Do this in remembrance of me," but he's not referencing the bread and wine. He's actually referencing just the offering in and of itself. But he talks about how he is the bread of life, and it was such a point of contention between the disciples that there are disciples that left him because of it. And I don't think anybody would have left him if he was like, "Oh, pretend this is me." So that's one of the things that, as I've just learned, like historically, what all of this, what the mass means, and all these different parts of the mass have come together, not just from somebody in Rome saying this is how we build the mass, but the hundreds of thousands of years of history from not just the New Testament where Jesus was, but also the Old Testament, kind of going hand in hand with my struggle with the Eucharist. I very recently um, have been struggling a lot with just receiving the blood of Christ, like we kind of talked about. I had a lot of hesitation because of my sobriety, knowing that it was once wine. And as I've been reading the Old Testament and reading the blood of the covenant and just how sacred blood is, like not just the symbolism of it, but truly how sacred blood is used in the Old Testament and how it's offered up to God and it's such a sign of worship. There was something in my heart that changed a couple weeks ago that completely changed my view on it. And that's when I received the blood of Christ for the first time in like I think 6 or 7 years. Um, so those are one of the main things. I think other things that I have started to learn that I think have been really cool is just apostolic succession. So how we go from Peter, the first pope, all the way to our current priests, and how priests are ordained and how it talks about in the Old Testament. All of these things where I struggled a lot with the authority of the church. I struggled a lot with just the human people. I think the Catholic Church is known for some very horrible demonic faults that has happened, and I completely condemn all of those. But I think because of those, it has distorted our view of like the priest versus him being in persona Christi. And so some of the things I've learned is just like how we view the priest, how we view saints, how we pray to them. We don't worship them, which I even thought for a while that we worship them. We worship Mary, um, which like now I'm like, okay, now I get it. But I definitely thought that.
I'm
And
sure there are
I think
people who do worship Mary. It's still.
no, I'm sure there's people who take it way too far. But just truly like the church's stance on it and what we're supposed to do. And yeah, the authority of the church was something big. I've gotten into so many arguments with my mom about like the papacy and like bishops and priests and all this stuff. Um, but yeah, just there are a lot of things that I think are misconstrued about the Catholic faith that as I've started to discover, even just by reading the Bible, I'm like, oh, like if we just picked up the book, we would understand it so much better. Like it's really not that hard. It's just nobody puts the effort in to do so. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I think it's intimidating, right? I mean, I do my little nightly readings, and like so many people struggle to read it and understand it. I mean, I sat there and read the entire thing like a book in 5 months, and I learned a lot, but I realized like there's so much I didn't retain. So it's something that's
Yeah.
meant to be studied our entire lives, and for us to never
Hmm.
understand, right? Like that was one of the things for me that was like someone told me like you're not really meant to. Even the Bible says it. The Bible says it that you are not meant to understand these things. That's why I speak to you in parables, because those who are meant to hear hear, those who are meant to see see. Right. So it's a beautiful thing of what that is. And thank you for kind of like really diving into that. Like those are things that I have similar thoughts of, like kind of what ended up leading me to the Catholic faith. So those are some of those main questions that I had, right? And you articulated them so well. So thank you. I'd like to kind of make a pivot. So, as the podcast is called "From the Sinner's Mouth," we're all sinners, right? Trying not to be.
Yes.
So, um, one question I'd like to ask anyone who I have on here is, if you're willing to share it, what would you say is your biggest struggle or biggest sin? And just kind of talk about that. What is it? How does it affect your life? What kind of things do you do to overcome it? Can you overcome it? Just like I'm going to say this every time, just because I like to be transparent. Mine is lust, and I know I'm a male and those things, but women and kind of that aspect of it has been my thing. So, like, what would be yours?
Yeah. Um, extremely common, just extremely uncommon to talk about. I think also is lust. I struggle a lot with not just the feeling in and of itself, but all of the surrounding feelings that cause it. I think lust is the easy answer, the easy solution to a lot of other difficult things in my life. Um, I think I struggle a lot with anger and resentment and lack of control and anxiety. And I think all of those are manipulated into a form of lust, which is a really weird thing to say. But as I've, you know, sinned and tried to overcome it, I've learned a lot about kind of my habits that lead to it. But I think it's something that's really uncommon to talk about as a woman. I remember the first time I talked about it, it was actually a group of women. It was in my women's group that I first heard someone talk about it. And then I felt brave enough to talk about it. And I was like, oh, like other people struggle with this? Like, I thought I was a freak. Like, I thought, like, I was so weird for this being something to struggle with. Like, as a woman, like, I'm supposed to be dainty and pure and innocent and not think about these things. But instead, no, it's definitely something I struggle with because, like I said, it goes hand in hand with so many other little issues that I have to tackle. I think it's something that I'll always struggle with. I think we all have sins that are just constantly going to get brought up. I think that's going to be one of my main ones because it goes hand in hand with control for me. And I'm not going to be able to control everything in my life. So, as much as I want to, I won't be able to. Um, but ways that I try to overcome it. Um, obviously there's very simple ones where I keep myself busy. So over the last like few months, one of like the ways I try to keep myself busy is by reading. I actually picked up a book called Theology of the Body to read about lust because I'm like the only way I'm really gonna try to overcome it is if I understand it better. I think for the longest time I tried to suppress it. I tried to distract myself. I tried to not think about it. I tried to put it in the back of my head, whatever, and that just it came back 10 times harder. Like that was not something that worked for me. So instead I was like, I'm going to embrace it, which is actually, that I realize, is something I've done a lot with my faith. Are the things that I've doubted, I've fully embraced. um so yeah, so I did that. More recently, it's continuously been a struggle, but I have started to physically make myself busy. I just started making rosaries like 2 nights ago because I'm like, at night is where I feel like I struggle the most. And I was like, I'm physically going to sit up and make myself busy. But like I said, just trying to busy myself, but also understand it. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to acknowledge it and embrace it and think about it because that's what Satan wants us to do. He doesn't want us to think. He wants us to feel, and that's kind of the demise of a lot of things. So
No, I mean, thank you for. I know, I imagine as a woman, it can't be easy to talk about that. I know I've had some like private conversations with people, so thank you for being willing to share that publicly. And for any other women who may be listening to this, right, for them to kind of know that, hey, this, like you said, oh, this isn't just me. This is bigger than me, and what does that look like? Can
yeah,
you just briefly go over what some of those triggers are for you and like what you now do? I mean, obviously, you kind of went over some of the solutions, but I imagine you recognize them sooner based off of what you learned. So, can you go over some of those so people can know what to
yeah,
look out for?
yeah. I mean, everybody's going to be different. For me, I know when I'm single. I tend to be more susceptible to it because I lack a lot of accountability in myself. And so for me, a lot of the triggers have to do with like social media, but more so what's going around in my day to day life, like how I'm spiritually taking care of myself. We currently have a very full house and it's very chaotic, and that chaos and not being able to control my environment, not being able to have like wholesome alone time, not being able to take care of myself properly, like spiritually and mentally, all cause like this discombobulation inside of me where I'm like, what's the one thing I can control? And that paired with how sexual social media can be nowadays. Um, it honestly, it happens a lot when I'm about to fall asleep, which sucks because I'm tired, like I want to go to bed. But it's those opportune moments where I am my weakest that I feel like the feeling comes up of like I want to control something. I don't care. I just want to have some type of control. And I think those are the moments that have kind of impacted me the most. And like I said, it goes hand in hand so with my lack of accountability. Um, because when I'm in a relationship, I care so much about the other person. Like my own selfishness is like in the like I actually become a very selfless person when I'm with somebody. But when I'm on my own, I kind of am like, who's gonna know? Me and God. Oh, okay. Well, and I'm able to talk myself out of it, which is hurtful. It's so awful and something I'm working on. But yeah, I think those are kind of where I start to notice the most triggers. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, and I can. It's funny listening to you talk about these things. It makes me think a lot about my own issues and like that want or need to control something, right? Like it's like, oh, what can I control? I can control this. I can control what I do with my body and making myself feel a certain way or whatever, even for a moment. And then I imagine there's probably like a, damn it, why did I do that? I really didn't need to do that, right? Like afterwards, and you're just like, ah, like what did I do? Or there's kind of like a rebelliousness of like, well, I did it, and I guess gotta go to confession now. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
So for anyone who is maybe not in their faith or kind of learning along the way, like myself. Like faith came to me kind of later in life. It was there in the beginning in a I guess somewhat of a cradle way, but not really. And then like there was a long separation of it, and then so now I'm just trying to figure it out. So what would be maybe some of the best advice that you've received? And then what advice would you give? Would it be that, or would it maybe be your own variation of that for people that are just trying to figure it out along this journey?
Yeah, some of the best advice that I have received on this journey. Um, well, first of all, I kind of went on this journey on my own for the most part. My little sister kind of joined in a little bit, but she's kept her faith really well. But doing it alone was really hard. And some of the best advice I have received that I've kind of like overheard through podcasts and stuff is just to be graceful and understand that we are broken. Like we're in constant rebellion towards God, and it's okay to acknowledge that. Um, not to lean on, not to rest on your laurels, like not to use that as an excuse, but just give yourself patience and give yourself time, but just constantly and be in pursuit of Christ. I once heard from somebody actually, like you're either moving closer to Christ or moving away from Him, but you're never constant. And I was like, that kind of checked me. I was like, well, I know I'm not moving closer, so it's like, dang, okay. And so that's kind of something that I constantly reminding myself of, like, just be graceful, but just like keep moving. Some of the best advice I would give is to ask a lot of questions. Try to think. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Give yourself grace. I think that's so important. I think we tend to be very hard on ourselves. I think that's the culture right now is to be very go, go, go. You have to do this, be that, be the best, be the greatest, have all the answers. And I think understanding our humanity is so important. And I think as I read the Old Testament too, I've kind of just like formulated this reading the Old Testament is like, as a reader, I'm able to identify like how sorry God, but like how dumb the Israelites were for like the longest time. I'm like, are you serious? Like, God saved you a lot. Like, He saved your spot. And it's easy for me to point it out, but then I laugh at myself because I'm like, how many times has God saved you and you still make the same mistakes, right? So I think understanding our brokenness and understanding that, like, we're constantly gonna mess up, we're constantly gonna fail. Like, there's never gonna be a moment where we're oh, okay, like now we're the perfect Christian. Now we're the perfect Catholic. Like now this is what it was all for, right? It's like, no, it's not about an end result. It's about the journey and like what you do with that journey. Like are you withholding that information to yourself or are you sharing your testimony? Like you doing this is so beautiful because that's how other people are going to relate to it. So anyone new in their faith, I would just say ask a lot of questions. Like talk about yourself, talk about your problems, talk about, your hesitations and just have a very open and graceful relationship with Christ. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I don't personally have any other questions right now. I think we covered quite a bit. I love how we went,
Yeah.
from the start of your journey, from you being a cradle Catholic to kind of what led you to fall away, to what brought you back, lessons and things you learned along the way,
Yeah.
your kind of big struggles. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or to add?
Um, I just remind people that like you are not alone and there are so many people in the world that have the exact same struggles that you do that you don't realize. And I think that's why it's so important and something that I would criticize a little bit about the Catholic Church is just the community. Um, as fearful as it can be to get involved, especially if you're new in your faith, like you're like, I don't know anything. Don't let that be a weakness for you. Don't let that deter you from trying to, you know, build a relationship with somebody because I think being able to have a community where you can pose those questions and learn. Like I've learned so much just by being part of the Catholic community online and slowly starting to meet people. Um, it just helps so much just to have that space to be like, okay, I'm not alone. Like I question these things and other people question these things and this is okay. Like we're allowed to have questions. I think as women, we are made to have like this certain image within the church. And I think it's really important for us as women to be of good faith and try to live a pure life and try to imitate Mary as often as we can, but also understand that the devil comes after us hard. Um, we read a lot about that in the Bible, and I think especially in Revelation, Satan going after the new Eve, which is Mary. And I think as women, we especially need to know that we have a special target on our backs, and it's really important for us to hold each other accountable and build a strong community and stand firm in our faith. Um, Never be ashamed. Never be ashamed of your faith. Never be ashamed of what you believe in or your questions. I think that's also something I struggled with was ignorance and keeping my opinions and my faith and all these things to myself. But I think people need to start being more bold. So yeah.
Fantastic. A couple more things.
Yes.
I'd like to. I just had some questions that popped up. So, one, I know that you started veiling because I follow you on
Yeah.
TikTok. So, can you?
Yes.
I personally love veil. Like when I see a young woman in a veil, I'm like, oh, it's so hot. Like it's so, but like not in an inappropriate way. Like in like the most reverent
Yeah.
way, right? Like I love to
Exactly.
see it. So, what
Mhm.
got you doing that? And like how was that experience been for you?
So veiling was something that I um seeing on TikTok. Like it was something that like kept popping up, which was really random because I had never searched it or thought about it. But something that kind of like popped up back in like July, I think, June or July, and maybe in June, yeah. And I started to see it. Those are really pretty. But like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't do that. Like anytime I saw somebody at church veiling, it was A, mostly a really old person, and B, I was like, they are so much holier than I am. Like they're veiling, like they are like up there with Christ, right? Like they are like hood is right there for them. Um, so every time veiling would pop up, I'm like, oh, that looks beautiful. Like I'm curious about it, but also I'm like, I don't feel holy enough to veil. Like I don't feel like that kind of person. But it just kept popping up, and I started to understand that God's way of getting to me is repetition. He shows me a lot of things at the same time until I'm like, okay, like, do you get it now? So I kept seeing it, and it just kept poking at me more and more. Honestly, similar to going back to Mass was like right when I started to feel like I should go back to Mass, it was that poke of like, hey, I'm going to keep putting this in your head. I'm going to keep showing you things. I'm going to keep saying things. Veiling was very similar. Um, and in August, late July, August, Um, I was kind of like really, really considering it, but I just did not have the confidence for it. And it took a good conversation about pushing me to do it for me to just make the jump. And I was so uncomfortable that first time. I talk about it on my TikTok. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it. And like I said, a lot of the things in my faith this year have been, oh, it makes you uncomfortable. Oh, you doubt it. Oh, you have a lot of unbelief. Okay, now you're going to do it. Like now you're going to embrace it because previously I ran from it. So I did. I got veils. I wore it to church, and I was just so afraid of like, oh, spotlight's on me. Like everyone's looking at me. Everyone in mass is here because they're gonna stare at me. They're not focused on Jesus at all, which is the dumbest thing. I think two people looked at me. Um, but I wore it and walked out. I was like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Like it felt very like it's cool because the way it sits, like it almost closes in, like almost like blinders, like horses wear. And I was like, oh, I feel like I can focus a little bit better. But I was like, ah, I don't know, like this is so just like not me. And then I was like, but I'm gonna keep doing it. And then I went to mass the second time, and I was like, oh, I feel a little bit better. Like I got a few different colors. I'm like, oh, this one matches really well. Like, okay, this looks nice. Like I like this. And then the third mass, I was like this. And it got to a point where I was just doing it and doing it until there was one time I went to mass like last minute and I didn't have a veil with me, and I was like, like my veil, like I want my veil. And so it's gotten to this like beautiful point where it's kind of a part of me of my Sundays. I've felt this special devotion to Mary because of it, of just wanting to cover and be reverent and honor her. Like I said, like I've had this like drawn to her more and more, but also I don't know. I can't put a finger on it, but I just feel so like beautiful, but not in like a very physical sense. I feel like very radiant, like for Christ. And
Mm.
it's been this really cool experience where I feel closed in and that it's more me and him there. I'm able to focus better and I started to notice other people, like more and more. It's almost like once I started doing it, I started noticing younger people doing it. And I was like, oh, wait, other people here veil. And it's gotten to a beautiful opportunity where now, like, people have come up to me asking about my veil and talking about veils and all this stuff. And, like, I don't know. It's built this really cool, like, feminine community, and I've loved it so far. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. And then the last question is, if you're willing to talk about it, I know you've talked about like femininity and you're a little bit more traditional. So as you are
Yeah.
single and uh, what is that experience like as a Catholic girl dating and and single? And what is it that you are looking for like in a partner? And that's just to kind of live your life like for anyone who
Yeah.
may be watching this.
Yeah. It's been a journey. I, longest time, grew up very much of the world. I had a couple of siblings who were stay-at-home moms, and I saw the way the marriages went, and I just resented that idea of it. Um, and so I went into the workforce. I worked corporate. I was a boss babe. I did all these things. Did all the right things that society wants me to do. That my dad would want me to do. All of these things. But it wasn't until this last year, getting to full time take care of my niece and embracing unofficially that role of a stay at home mom that I fell in love with the role that I was in. I had a complete change of heart. I completely softened my mindset of what being a stay at home mom was and just the idea of being a homemaker and a caretaker and fully embracing that, like fully embracing the opportunity to serve. Um, serve my niece for now, but eventually like a husband and a child, just having that role. And then reading the Bible has only affirmed that for me. Now that's not to say that there aren't strong women in the world who are in the position that they should be in, but for me, I think that femininity and that traditional lifestyle is so suppressed right now. And it's such a beautiful thing to embrace. And I think there's so many women out there who have that desire in their hearts and they don't express that because it's not the way our world lives right now. And I myself in that last relationship was told that it was unattainable. I was told that that's not something I could do or could be, and good luck finding someone that wanted that. And it was really discouraging, I think, which is why it took so long for me to get to the headspace that I'm at now. Now, where that goes hand in hand with like my faith is, like I said, reading the Bible, just affirming that servanthood and even the way the women played a role in Jesus's life, like being like beautiful servants, and he cherished them, right? Like it's not an oppressed role, but Jesus loved Mary, he loved Martha, he loved all of these women in the Bible, and seeing the way women are cherished and pursued, even in scripture, is like it's so affirming, for these feelings that I've had. And so for anyone watching who has those feelings, I encourage you to like dive deep on it. I know right now, like it's hard to be single and to have these feelings and to still like have responsibility and need to survive. Like I think we're all kind of in survival mode. But don't let that discourage you and don't let that let go of your heart. I think I look like in regards to like who I look for someone who follows God, someone who is a leader, but because they're led by God. I think the reason I have a lot of resentment towards other relationships that I've seen that have a traditional dynamic is because that man in the relationship is not being led by God, but loves to have an authoritative role. And I don't think that those are the type of relationships that should exist. I want something that's very traditional and he is led by God and he is strong and he is firm in his faith. Um, but like I heard Father Mike Schmidt said, like Eve was taken from Adam's side, from his head, so she could, rule over him, not from his feet, so he could rule over her, but from his side, so that she could be a helpmate. And I think that is the perfect example of what a relationship should be, is where there is a distinct leader of the relationship, but the wife plays that role of being a helpmate and being right there by their side regardless. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and I think you're right. I think a lot of women, I'm having these kinds of conversations a lot privately, but I think a lot of women really want that. They just don't know maybe how to live it, or they've been told that it's wrong for so long. So you've heard it first here from Colby. If that's how you feel, please make sure that you shout it to the rooftops. Um,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, and for any men who are listening to this, Colby's single, and so now you know what she's looking for. So if you fit that bill, make sure you reach out. But thank you so much. Our second Zoom meeting has come up on time. I guess this time it gave me 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for sharing your testimony with everyone here. Thank you for being vulnerable. I know that that's not easy. Do you want me to post your socials and things so people can reach out to you? Okay, perfect. Um, any final thoughts?
No, just a sinner, try not to be. So
I love it. Well, from the Sinner's Mouth podcast, we're all sinners. Just try not to be. Thank you all, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everybody.